Weather disasters have been shaping our world since the dawn of time, leaving behind a trail of devastation, loss, and resilience. Today, we're diving into the incredible stories of these wild natural events, uncovering the chaos, survival, and the long-lasting impact they've had on human history. But before we get into the heart of these events, it's important to understand the sheer unpredictability and power that makes weather disasters one of the most fearsome forces on Earth. Throughout history, humans have been at the mercy of Mother Nature's wrath, whether it's the swirling fury of a tornado, the torrential downpours of a flood, or the scorching heat of an unrelenting drought. These weather-related disasters have left entire civilizations struggling to rebuild. Despite all our advancements in science and technology, there remains one unshakable truth. Nature is unpredictable, and we can only prepare for so much. From sudden violent storms to long-term disasters like droughts, the damage inflicted can be immediate and catastrophic, or slow and suffocating, changing the course of history in ways we sometimes fail to grasp. Think about the scale of destruction a single hurricane or tornado can unleash. Imagine a storm sweeping through a bustling city, turning homes to rubble in mere minutes, displacing families, and leaving the landscape unrecognizable. Or picture the devastating effects of a multi-year drought, slowly withering crops, draining rivers, and pushing entire communities to the brink of survival. It's hard to comprehend, but these kinds of events have been woven into the fabric of human existence for millennia. These disasters come without warning, stripping away the sense of control we believe we have over our environment. A striking example of how unpredictable these events can be is the infamous Galveston hurricane of 1900. In an era with limited understanding of meteorology, Galveston, Texas had little warning when the monstrous hurricane struck. Within hours, over 6,000 lives were lost and entire neighborhoods were swept away. This disaster became a painful reminder of nature's fury and the fragile balance between human existence and the forces of the earth. In its wake, the city realized it had to adapt, building the now famous Galveston seawall to protect itself from future storms, a testament to how disasters push societies to adapt and evolve. But Galveston wasn't the only place to suffer. Civilizations around the world have been ravaged by similar catastrophes. The Great Chinese Famine, for instance, which occurred between 1959 and 1961, was caused by a combination of drought, flooding, and poor agricultural practices. The scale of devastation was unimaginable. Millions of people perished due to a lack of food and resources. The government was ill-prepared for such an immense disaster, which only compounded the suffering. Events like this not only highlight the destructive power of weather, but also the vulnerability of societies that aren't ready to face them head-on. As we explore the impact of these events, it becomes clear that weather disasters aren't just moments in time. They often lead to lasting consequences that ripple through history. In some cases, they've even brought down entire civilizations. One famous example is Angkor Wat, an ancient city in Cambodia, which was profoundly affected by severe droughts and subsequent flooding. These relentless weather patterns eventually led to the city's abandonment, leaving behind a haunting reminder of how even the mightiest of societies can fall when nature turns against them. In many ways, these weather disasters serve as a stark reminder of how small we are in the face of natural forces. Despite the towering cities we've built, the sprawling infrastructure we've created, and the advancements we've made in science and technology, we remain vulnerable to the whims of the weather. For all our efforts, there is a limit to what we can control, and the power of nature reminds us of that with each disaster. Stay tuned as we continue to explore more extraordinary weather disasters in the upcoming parts, where we will delve deeper into specific events that have left indelible marks on our planet and humanity. We'll unravel the stories behind some of the most destructive storms, the relentless droughts that changed history, and the wildfires that swept through entire regions, stories that still shape our understanding of survival today. And as we continue, remember that the unpredictability of these events often becomes a catalyst for resilience, innovation, and the human drive to adapt, whether through the development of stronger infrastructure, advanced meteorology, or disaster response efforts. Each weather disaster leaves behind a legacy of lessons learned, and that's where we'll pick up in the next part of this journey. Weather disasters have done more than just ravage landscapes and take lives. They've reshaped entire civilizations and left lasting marks on human culture. These powerful events have forced societies to adapt, rethink, and evolve, influencing everything from infrastructure to religious beliefs. As we dive deeper into the role of weather disasters in history, we'll see how these natural calamities have pushed humans to respond in ways that have defined our collective past and continue to shape our future. Throughout history, civilizations have learned to live with the constant threat of natural disasters. In many cases, these events were not only viewed as physical threats, but also as spiritual or divine messages. Ancient societies, lacking the scientific understanding we have today, often attributed these disasters to gods or supernatural forces. For them, a powerful storm or devastating flood wasn't just a natural occurrence, it was a sign from the heavens, either a punishment or a warning. This belief influenced how people lived, worshipped, and even governed. For example, in ancient Egypt, the annual flooding of the Nile River was both a blessing and a threat. While it was essential for the fertility of the land, it also posed the danger of overflooding, which could destroy crops and settlements. To mitigate this risk, the Egyptians developed complex irrigation and drainage systems to control the water and prevent widespread destruction. These systems weren't just practical engineering feats. They were also deeply tied to the Egyptians' religious beliefs. The flooding was seen as a gift from the god Hapi, and elaborate rituals were performed to ensure that the waters would rise just enough to nourish the land without causing harm. Meanwhile, the ancient Greeks had their own ways of interpreting weather disasters, incorporating them into their mythology. The god Poseidon, for instance, was not only the ruler of the sea, but also the bringer of storms and earthquakes. Sailors would offer sacrifices to appease Poseidon, hoping to avoid his wrath when they ventured out onto the unpredictable seas. This connection between weather disasters and the gods reveals how deeply intertwined natural events were with the spiritual and cultural lives of ancient people. But it wasn't just religious beliefs that were shaped by these events. Weather disasters also influenced political structures and societal development. In many cases, rulers and governments rose or fell based on their ability to respond to these disasters. For example, during the collapse of the Roman Empire, a series of devastating famines and floods severely weakened the empire's ability to maintain order and stability. The agricultural economy of Rome was dependent on predictable seasons, and when extreme weather events disrupted food production, it led to widespread hunger, social unrest, and eventually political upheaval. The inability to manage these crises was one of the many factors that contributed to the empire's decline. Even in more recent history, we can see how weather disasters have prompted significant changes in government policies and societal behavior. Take the example of the Dust Bowl in the United States during the 1930s. This period of severe drought, coupled with poor farming practices, led to massive dust storms that devastated the agricultural heartland of the country. The disaster forced the U.S. government to intervene on an unprecedented scale, establishing the Soil Conservation Service and launching massive relief efforts to support struggling farmers. The Dust Bowl also prompted widespread changes in farming techniques, with an emphasis on sustainable practices that could prevent similar disasters in the future. But perhaps one of the most striking impacts of weather disasters has been on human migration and settlement patterns. Throughout history, entire communities have been forced to relocate due to the devastating effects of floods, droughts, and other natural calamities. These migrations have, in turn, shaped the development of cities, trade routes, and even cultures. One notable example of this is the ancient civilization of Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. This region, located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, was prone to devastating floods that could wipe out entire settlements. To cope with the unpredictable flooding, the people of Mesopotamia developed advanced irrigation systems and flood control measures, which allowed them to thrive in the region. However, when these systems failed, as they sometimes did, entire cities were abandoned and people were forced to migrate to safer areas. These migrations played a crucial role in spreading culture, technology, and ideas throughout the ancient world. The impact of weather disasters on migration can also be seen in more recent times. During the Irish potato famine in the mid-19th century, a combination of blight and unfavorable weather conditions led to a massive agricultural failure, causing widespread hunger and forcing over 1 million people to flee the country. Many of these migrants ended up in the United States, where they not only found new lives but also contributed to the cultural and economic development of their new home. In some cases, the long-term effects of weather disasters have even shaped the course of human history. For example, the volcanic eruption of Mount Tambora in 1850 triggered what became known as the Year Without a Summer. the eruption spewed so much ash into the atmosphere that it caused global temperatures to drop, leading to failed harvests and widespread famine across Europe, North America, and Asia. This disaster not only resulted in immense suffering, but also led to significant political and social changes, including the migration of families to less affected regions and the development of new farming techniques to adapt to the cooler climate. As we reflect on these events, it becomes clear that weather disasters are not just isolated incidents. They are catalysts for change. They force societies to adapt, evolve, and sometimes even relocate, leaving behind lasting legacies in the form of cultural traditions, technological advancements, and shifts in power structures. These disasters have shaped human history in ways both large and small, influencing everything from religious beliefs to political systems and migration patterns. In the next part, we'll explore how weather disasters have not only challenged human societies, but have also sparked significant advancements in science and technology. From hurricane-resistant buildings to advanced meteorological forecasting, these disasters have led to some of the most important innovations that continue to protect us from the unpredictable forces of nature today. Stay tuned as we uncover the incredible human ingenuity that has emerged in response to these powerful and often devastating events. Weather disasters, while devastating, have often spurred remarkable scientific and technological advancements as humanity sought to better understand, predict, and mitigate the impacts of these natural events. From ancient times to the modern day, each disaster has been a driving force behind innovations that have not only saved lives but also revolutionized how we interact with our environment. In this part, we will explore the key breakthroughs that have arisen from the necessity to confront nature's most destructive forces. One of the earliest scientific responses to weather disasters can be traced back to the development of more advanced tools for predicting the weather. Historically, the unpredictability of storms, floods, and droughts made it nearly impossible for communities to prepare adequately. However, after centuries of trial and error, humans began to harness scientific principles to better forecast these events. One of the biggest turning points came with the invention of the barometer in the 17th century by Evangelista Torricelli, which allowed people to measure atmospheric pressure and predict weather changes. This was a major step in understanding and anticipating natural disasters like storms and hurricanes. Building on early instruments like the barometer, the development of meteorology as a formal scientific discipline began to take shape in the 19th century. The rapid advances in weather prediction were partly driven by the need to prevent the catastrophic loss of life and property caused by frequent hurricanes and other storms. As more accurate data collection methods were developed, governments and military organizations began to invest in weather stations, leading to the formation of national meteorological services. One of the most notable or early successes was the establishment of the U.S. National Weather Service in 1870, which was created largely in response to severe weather events that affected the country's agricultural and economic stability. However, predicting weather alone wasn't enough. Engineers also turned their attention to designing and building structures that could withstand extreme conditions. In regions prone to earthquakes, for example, the construction of buildings became a critical focus. The devastating earthquake in San Francisco in 1906, which reduced much of the city to rubble, prompted a rethinking of architectural standards. In the aftermath of this disaster, new building codes were introduced that required earthquake-resistant designs, such as flexible foundations and reinforced structures that could absorb and distribute seismic energy more effectively. These innovations, which were initially driven by necessity, are now considered standard practice in modern earthquake-prone regions. Hurricanes, too, have driven technological innovation in building design. After Hurricane Andrew struck Florida in 1992, causing billions of dollars in damage and leaving entire neighborhoods flattened, engineers and architects re-examined building codes in hurricane-prone areas. In response, stricter regulations were introduced, requiring homes to be built with stronger materials, impact-resistant windows, and hurricane straps to secure roofs more effectively. These advancements have made modern buildings far more resilient to the powerful winds and storm surges associated with hurricanes, reducing both loss of life and damage in future storms. In addition to these structural advancements, weather disasters have also prompted significant developments in emergency response technology and infrastructure. One of the most important innovations in this area has been the widespread adoption of early warning systems. After the catastrophic Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, which claimed the lives of more than 230,000 people, there was a global push to establish tsunami warning systems that could alert coastal communities before disaster struck. Today, these systems use a combination of seismographs, buoys, and satellite data to detect tsunamis and send alerts to potentially affected areas within minutes, giving people precious time to evacuate. The increasing availability of real-time data, combined with advancements in communication technology, has also transformed disaster management. In recent decades, satellite technology has revolutionized the way we monitor and track weather systems. Satellites like the GOES, Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellites, provide continuous high-resolution imagery of Earth's weather patterns, allowing meteorologists to track storms and hurricanes with unprecedented accuracy. This data is then disseminated to the public through mobile apps, television broadcasts, and emergency alert systems, enabling governments to issue timely warnings and coordinate evacuations more effectively. Beyond forecasting and disaster management, weather disasters have driven innovations in energy technology as well. In the aftermath of severe hurricanes or other storms, power outages often last for days or even weeks. In response, engineers have developed more resilient energy solutions, such as microgrids and renewable energy systems that can operate independently of centralized power grids. After Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico in 2017, leaving millions without power, the island began investing in solar energy and battery storage systems to ensure that communities could have access to electricity during future storms. These efforts represent a shift toward more sustainable and resilient energy infrastructures, which are becoming increasingly important as the frequency and intensity of weather disasters continue to rise. One particularly striking example of weather-related technological innovation is the field of climate modeling. As scientists have come to understand that extreme weather events are often exacerbated by climate change, they have developed sophisticated computer models to predict how future climate patterns might influence the frequency and severity of disasters. These models simulate the interactions between the atmosphere, oceans, and land, providing invaluable insights into how rising global temperatures might lead to more intense storms, floods, and droughts. Governments and policymakers use these models to plan for long-term resilience, guiding infrastructure investments and disaster preparedness strategies. Interestingly, some of the most impactful weather-related innovations have not been large-scale technologies, but small, life-saving devices. For instance, after devastating floods in South Asia displaced millions of people, the development of portable water purification systems became a critical innovation for disaster relief efforts. These lightweight devices allow people in flood-stricken areas to access safe drinking water, reducing the risk of disease outbreaks and improving the overall quality of life during recovery efforts. Weather disasters, while undeniably tragic, have served as powerful catalysts for human ingenuity. From forecasting tools to resilient building designs, early warning systems, and climate modeling, the need to protect communities from the forces of nature has driven some of the most significant scientific and technological breakthroughs of the modern era. These innovations not only help mitigate the impacts of future disasters, but also enable societies to rebuild stronger and more sustainably. In the next part, we'll explore how communities worldwide have come together in the aftermath of weather disasters, showcasing acts of resilience, solidarity, and global cooperation in response to these challenging events. Stay tuned for a closer look at the human spirit's remarkable ability to endure and rebuild in the face of devastation. In the wake of devastating weather disasters, communities across the world have demonstrated incredible resilience and solidarity. When disaster strikes, it not only tests the strength of local infrastructures, but also the collective spirit of humanity. In this part, we will examine how people come together, both at a local and global level, to recover, rebuild, and provide support to those most affected by extreme weather events. One of the most compelling aspects of human resilience is how individuals and communities mobilize in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. While weather disasters often leave behind widespread destruction, they also spark powerful responses of cooperation and recovery. Local communities are usually the first to respond, with neighbors helping one another by providing shelter, food, and emotional support. After Hurricane Katrina ravaged New Orleans in 2005, for example, while governmental agencies struggled with delayed response efforts, It was the local residents, volunteers, and grassroots organizations who led the way in rescuing trapped individuals, distributing supplies, and offering comfort to displaced families. Beyond local efforts, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, play a vital role in disaster relief and recovery. Organizations like the Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, and the World Food Program often arrive on the scene within hours or days of a disaster, bringing crucial medical aid, food, and clean water to affected populations. After the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, which left the country in a state of extreme emergency, international NGOs were instrumental in delivering much-needed supplies and setting up temporary hospitals to treat the injured. Their coordinated efforts helped save countless lives and prevent further health crises, such as cholera outbreaks, which often follow disasters due to unsanitary conditions. Another critical component of post-disaster recovery is the involvement of international governments and the global community. In today's interconnected world, no country is left to face a major disaster alone. International aid in the form of financial assistance, personnel, and equipment has become a cornerstone of global disaster response. After the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, which affected multiple countries across Southeast Asia, governments from around the world rallied together to provide support. The United States, the United Kingdom, and Japan, among others, contributed billions of dollars in humanitarian aid and sent military ships, helicopters, and rescue teams to assist in recovery efforts. This massive outpouring of international support demonstrated how global cooperation could dramatically accelerate the recovery process and restore hope to devastated regions. In addition to immediate relief efforts, long-term recovery and rebuilding are critical for disaster-affected areas. While initial emergency responses often capture headlines, the work of rebuilding can take years, requiring sustained efforts to restore infrastructure, homes, and livelihoods. Communities in disaster-prone areas have increasingly adopted a Build Back Better philosophy, aiming to rebuild infrastructure that is not only restored, but strengthened to withstand future events. After the catastrophic earthquake in Chile in 2010, the government led a reconstruction plan that focused on designing earthquake-resistant buildings and improving emergency preparedness. This strategy helped the country become more resilient to future earthquakes, significantly reducing casualties during subsequent tremors. While rebuilding physical infrastructure is crucial, psychological and emotional recovery is equally important. Weather disasters leave deep emotional scars as individuals grapple with the loss of homes, loved ones, and a sense of security. In many affected regions, mental health services are now seen as an essential part of disaster recovery. Trauma counseling, community support groups, and mental health hotlines are offered to survivors, helping them process the grief and shock caused by these events. After the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in Japan, which killed nearly 16,000 people and displaced hundreds of thousands, local governments and NGOs worked together to provide psychological support to survivors, especially children who were deeply affected by the disaster. Resilience also manifests in the strengthening of early warning systems and preparedness programs. Many communities have learned from past experiences and implemented systems to better prepare for future disasters. In flood-prone Bangladesh, for example, early warning systems combined with evacuation plans have saved thousands of lives during monsoon seasons. Local volunteers are trained to assist in evacuations, and shelters are built in strategic locations to house those affected. Such measures, which have evolved in response to recurring weather disasters, highlight how preparedness and proactive planning can significantly reduce the human toll of natural events. On a global scale, weather disasters have also catalyzed discussions about the broader implications of climate change. As extreme weather events become more frequent and intense, international cooperation on climate action has become increasingly urgent. The Paris Agreement, signed in 2015, represents one of the most significant global efforts to combat climate change and mitigate its impact on weather disasters. While the agreement focuses on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it also emphasizes the need for developed countries to provide financial and technical assistance to developing nations, which are often the most vulnerable to the effects of climate-related disasters. This global commitment underscores the recognition that weather disasters are not just local issues. They are global challenges that require coordinated response. In addition to international agreements, many nations are investing in renewable energy and green technologies as part of their resilience strategies. The shift towards sustainable energy sources, such as wind and solar power, is seen as a way to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels, which contribute to climate change and exacerbate the frequency of extreme weather events. Furthermore, renewable energy systems are often more resilient to disasters. For instance, decentralized solar power systems can provide electricity even when centralized power grids are damaged by hurricanes or floods, offering a lifeline to affected communities. The global response to weather disasters highlights both the fragility of our planet and the incredible strength of human solidarity. Whether through local acts of kindness, international aid efforts, or long-term resilience planning, people have shown time and again that in the face of disaster, they can come together to overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. These efforts not only help rebuild what has been lost, but also lay the foundation for a more resilient and prepared world. In the final part, we will conclude by reflecting on the lessons learned from weather disasters and exploring the future of disaster preparedness and resilience in a changing climate. Stay tuned for insights into how humanity continues to adapt and innovate in the face of nature's most powerful forces. As we conclude this journey through the impact of extreme weather disasters, it becomes clear that these events, while devastating, offer invaluable lessons for both communities and governments. One of the most significant takeaways is the importance of preparedness, resilience, and cooperation in minimizing the damage caused by natural disasters. In this final part, we'll reflect on the lessons learned from past disasters and look toward the future of weather disaster preparedness in an era of climate change. One of the primary lessons learned is the critical need for early warning systems and disaster preparedness. Over the years, countries that have invested in reliable early warning systems, evacuation plans, and public education have seen far fewer casualties from extreme weather events. For instance, Japan's sophisticated earthquake warning systems and the construction of earthquake-resistant buildings have saved countless lives during seismic events. Likewise, Bangladesh's improved flood warning systems and evacuation protocols have reduced deaths from monsoon-related floods, which once claimed thousands of lives each year. Preparedness is no longer a luxury. It is a necessity for any nation vulnerable to extreme weather. However, preparedness is only part of the equation. The concept of building resilience, both physical and social, has emerged as a cornerstone of modern disaster management. The focus now is not just on responding to disasters, but on ensuring that communities are equipped to recover quickly and ideally come back stronger. This includes building infrastructure that can withstand future disasters, providing mental health support to help people cope with trauma, and ensuring that local economies can bounce back after being disrupted. The Build Back Better philosophy embraced by disaster-stricken nations like Chile and Japan highlights how recovery efforts can be an opportunity to invest in long-term resilience. Another key lesson is the importance of international cooperation. In an interconnected world, no country can effectively respond to large-scale disasters on its own. The global response to weather disasters, whether through financial aid, relief efforts, or technical support, has proven to be essential in alleviating suffering and speeding up recovery. International organizations, such as the United Nations, the Red Cross, and the World Bank, have been instrumental in coordinating disaster response efforts across borders. In the future, global cooperation will likely play an even greater role, especially as climate change increases the frequency and severity of extreme weather events. Speaking of climate change, the future of weather disaster preparedness cannot be discussed without acknowledging its role. The scientific consensus is clear. Climate change is contributing to more intense storms, rising sea levels, prolonged droughts, and more frequent wildfires. As a result, disaster preparedness strategies must evolve to address these new challenges. Governments, scientists, and engineers are working on innovative solutions, from developing more accurate climate models to designing cities that can better withstand rising seas and stronger storms. One area where innovation is already making a difference is in the use of technology to predict and respond to disasters. Advances in satellite imaging, data analysis, and machine learning are enabling more precise forecasting of extreme weather events, giving communities more time to prepare. Drones are being used to assess damage in the aftermath of hurricanes and wildfires, helping aid organizations allocate resources more efficiently. Social media platforms are also playing a crucial role in disaster response, allowing real-time communication between emergency services and the public, and helping to spread life-saving information during crises. As we look toward the future, One of the most important lessons we've learned is the power of community, whether it's neighbors helping each other during a hurricane or global organizations coming together to provide aid after a tsunami. The human capacity for empathy, cooperation, and resilience is what truly defines our response to weather disasters. These events, while tragic, often bring out the best in humanity, reminding us that we are stronger together. In conclusion, weather disasters will continue to be a part of life on Earth, especially in an age of climate change. However, with the lessons learned from past disasters, the adoption of better preparedness strategies, and the increasing use of technology, we are more capable than ever of mitigating their effects. By fostering resilience, strengthening international cooperation, and investing in sustainable infrastructure, we can build a future where communities not only survive weather disasters, but thrive in the face of them. Ultimately, the true measure of progress will be how well we adapt to an ever-changing world, using the challenges posed by nature as opportunities to grow stronger and more united,